Hi guys, sorry I couldn't be there. I just have a couple things to go through with you guys before your quiz. We're just going to graph a couple of trig functions together on one set of axes, and we're just going to state how many times they intersect. So kind of what we did last week Friday in that last example. So I'm going to graph cos of 1/2 x and sine of x on the same set of axes on the interval of 0 to 2 pi. So I'm going to go ahead and mark every 3 boxes as pi over 2. Okay, the amplitude of my sine graph is 1, so that's why I'm marking off every 2 boxes as 1 on my y's. Now, starting with y equals sine of x, sine starts on the midline. Okay, like I said, the amplitude's 1, the frequency is 1, so that means the period is 2 pi. So if I start here, I'm going to end at 2 pi in the same location. Now remember, sine looks like the S, so halfway in between, I'm going to be hitting the x-axis at pi again. Since it's a positive sine curve, at pi over 2 we're going to be up at 1, and at 3 pi over 2 we're going to be down at -1. And that's our 1 sine curve. In pink, I'll do cos of 1/2 x, so amplitude of this will be 1. Frequency is 1, which means the period, frequency is 1/2, which means the period is 2 pi divided by 1/2, which is 4 pi. So what I want you guys to understand is that 1 full cosine curve is only going to happen over 4 pi, but you're only going to see on the side of axes from 0 to 2 pi. So that means you're only going to see this first half of our cosine curve. Okay, so I'm just going to start off the midline at 1 like cosine normally does. I'm going to then hit the midline halfway between 0 and 2 pi at pi, and then at 2 pi we'll be down at -1. And that's where we just kind of give it a little bit of curve, and that would be your cosine curve. So since I have 2 graphs on this, I should label. Okay, now it says on what interval are they intersecting, like what are the x values. I'm just going to ask you how many times they intersect, so ignore that question. How many times do you guys see them intersecting? I see 1, 2, 3 places. So if I ask how many values does sine of x equal cos of 1/2 x, the answer would be 3. Okay, so let's do one more example. This is going to be very similar, except now it's sine of 1/2 x and cos of x. Let's start with the easier one, y equals cos of x. Amplitude's 1, frequency is 1, which means the period is 2 pi. So every 3 boxes is pi over 2. Okay, every 2 boxes on my y's is going to be 1. Now cosine starts off the midline and kind of looks like a C. So that means I'm going to start off the midline at 1 and end off the midline at 1 after 2 pi units, since that's the period. Halfway in between, I'll be at the minimum. Halfway, halfway. I'm on the x-axis. And there you have it. Okay, so now I'm going to do sine of 1/2 x. So amplitude of the sine graph is 1, frequency is 1/2, which means the period, like the previous example, would be 4 pi. So guys, that means that this one whole sine curve you would see over 4 pi units, but we're only going to graph from 0 to 2 pi. So you're really only going to see this first hill. Okay, so that means I'm going to do these 2 x-intercepts and then the 1 max. Okay. So that means begins here, ends there for that first x-intercept, and then the hill will happen at pi. And that's it. That's all you're going to see. So this is y equals sine 1/2 x. This is y equals cos of x. So again, at how many places do you guys see them equaling each other? So I'm just changing this question, so I'm going to cross that off, so ignore that. So how many places? I see So at 2 places. Okay, so on your homework tonight, it will ask you for where they're equal. I want you guys just to ignore that, and I want you just to answer for me how many times are they equal to each other. So how many times do they intersect? Don't worry about the exact x values. All right, hopefully I see you guys back tomorrow.